Mr. Callum, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why is Eirich so immature?
I don't know. It's got to do something about that she's dead. I don't know.
She likes playing with snowballs.
You can't see it, but I'm nodding in disappointment.
Hello and welcome to Unlucky Day 13 of the Genesis of
Oh no,
Androzani.
that means this episode's going to be bad. This episode's going to be really bad.
Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar for 2023. We're here to do Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 8, which is called Hardhome. Last time we had the gift. Your thoughts coming off the gift going into Hardhome.
Well, Cersei's now in prison, thanks to the High Sparrow. Thanks to Lancel Lannister. So, I'm wondering how much of that we're going to get, because that actually might be the most interesting thing in King's Landing right now. Obviously, Jon has now left Castle Black to go beyond the wall to try and recruit as much as the wildlings as possible, and that's left, the place filled with really shitty people. So that's in a bit of a situation. And we obviously have Tyrion Lannister finally meeting Daenerys Targaryen, which is quite massive. That is quite a massive meeting of two massive characters in this show.
Yep.
So I
Something
imagine
that-
a scene between them will happen.
Something that hasn't happened in the books yet, so we're advancing ahead to the Winds of Winter now with Tyrion.
Yeah. Also, obviously, along with that, Jorah Mormont reuniting with Daenerys, which is quite big. He's had to literally fight his way to earn his way to not be sent away by her.
Yep.
With the help of his gift.
Maester Aemon passed away.
Yes, he did. It was quite sad.
And Samuel Tarly had sex.
Yes, that did happen.
And Melisandre wants to use the girl, and Stannis is like, "She's my daughter. Don't touch my daughter.
She's my daughter. She's my daughter."
And he's got a Chad beard now for the snows.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, if you want to see the full length reaction, that's going to be on Patreon.
I'm ready to go. 3 episodes left, and it doesn't feel like it, really.
Yeah, 3 episodes left of season 5.
Yeah. These last 3 episodes are normally the biggest of the season, like massive episodes.
I've got to say something, to be honest. Whilst I have done a lot of complaining on these reviews, I actually think this season has surprised me more than in a positive way than I remembered.
Yeah, it's not outright terrible. It's got some really bad stuff in it, but it's not a complete fall off.
I think it's probably because I've had a lot of distance from this. I haven't watched it in a long time, and you always hear people dunk on this season a lot, but I think they tend to overlook some of the more positive elements.
Yeah, there is some still really good stuff in here. It's just not as consistent as it was the last 4 seasons.
It's very up and down.
That makes it a bit more more apparent than
Yeah.
than any other normal show would, because it is quite a distance between this and season 4, other than obviously the last episode of season 4.
Yeah, it's very up and down, but if you look at episodes like High Sparrow, like Kill the Boy, and The Gift, there's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess what I would say for you is hopefully Hardhome is an up and not a down.
Yes, let's hope so.
That's so. All right. Well, we got an hour for this one, so shall we crack into it?
Oh boy, this is a long one. It's a long boy. Yes, I'm ready. Maybe we'll actually get some interesting character interactions in Marine for once.
By the time this video comes out, Ncuti Gatwa will be the current Doctor.
That's crazy, actually. That's crazy. By this time, the time this comes out, yeah, we would have lived through all of the 14th Doctor and the 15th Doctor will be here. That's actually quite crazy.
Yep. Oh, same director and writers as last time.
Yeah, that's what I thought. We'd open on.
I killed my mother, Joanna Lannister, on the day I was born. I killed my father, Tywin Lannister, with a bolt to the heart. I am the greatest Lannister killer of our time.
That's pretty funny. Shame that half of that is really terrible.
Remove Ser Jorah from the city.
The way the music sort of built up during that scene was fucking great. That was actually not bad. That wasn't bad at all.
Those walls are so massive.
Oh boy.
Cellular erosion.
Meanwhile...
Let me speak to her. Confess. I meant
Jesus.
She will see.
See what?
How can a man tell a girl this? If he knew what she
This is
was,
interesting.
there'd be no reason to send her.
Oysters, clams, and cockles!
What a thing to yell.
That looks like it smells
The
a
hair-
lot.
Yeah. Her hair looks like she belongs in the prequels.
Yep. Space buns.
Yeah. Get your clams and cockles, eh?
This guy looks like he belongs in the prequels as well.
Your oyster's fresh.
On Tatooine.
Your oyster's fresh.
You wouldn't lie to an old man, would you?
I'm not really an oyster person.
I like a lot of seafood, but I don't like oysters. They're just too much.
Very nice. Give me 4. With vinegar.
Fucking, that's gonna be strong if you have it with vinegar.
Can't do it.
Please, I've 3 children. Without me, here, take it. You have to. I've 3 children.
Go on, eat your very, very nice
The man is a
oyster.
gambler. A gift. For the thin man.
Oh, that music is just...
Mm-hmm.
Raymond Javadi's a genius.
I haven't seen you in a while. Like, episode 5 or something.
The trial will take place soon. Fornication, treason, incest, the murder of King Robert.
all lies.
Of course, Your Grace.
Of course, you Grace. Of course.
I rose him up from nothing. I will not kneel before some barefooted common and beg his forgiveness.
Damn, every scene in the music has just been stellar.
But it's also just Cersei's a character is just so good. So good.
She might be the best character this season, honestly.
Yeah, she's
It was
having
like
a-
John. It was John for the first half, but I think Cersei consistently has been the most intriguing character this season.
Yeah, she's kind of ever since Stannis left the wall, Cersei's been stealing it from John.
Yeah, definitely. Because John's just not been around for the last like 3 episodes.
There is no Theon. Reek.
Reek. Why did
Oh,
you
right,
call
Reek.
him Reek?
I was helping you.
Because he's fucking
I
whipped.
wanted to escape.
Good. If it weren't for you,
Can't
I'd
even just
still
have-
a family.
You can't have a little bit of sympathy, not a little bit.
Should be gone while you still breathe the air. Tell me to my face, Theon. Tell me that they weren't your brothers.
They weren't Bran and Rickon. I couldn't find them. It was too far, boys.
This is a really good shot.
I killed them and burned them so no one would know.
Do you know where they went, Bran and Rickon?
I can't talk to you anymore.
Theon, you have to tell me. Do you have any idea where they...
Not Theon! Reek!
Oh, she's breaking him.
Mm-hmm.
Someday, if you decide not to execute me, I'll tell you all about why I killed my father. And on that day, should it ever come, we'll need more wine than this.
I would also like to know.
Yeah.
I want a good reason. I want a good reason, not a shit one.
The brother who killed my father.
That's the one.
Perhaps I will have you killed after all.
Your queenly
Oh,
prerogative.
wine.
I'd given up on life until Varys convinced me you might be worth living for. You chop off my head.
Did he? That didn't happen. It felt like he was more convinced while I was hanging around with Jorah, really.
Yeah.
I never really felt like he was ever convinced by Varys. I don't think that is what happened. It didn't show it, that's for sure.
It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel. You're not the first person who's ever dreamt it.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
That was a really good dialogue exchange there.
I'm sure it'll lead to great things in future. Not.
Mm-hmm.
Let me fight for her, and I belong to you.
Man is committed.
Confess.
Oh, it's hideous. Queen Mother Cersei drinking water off a dirty floor.
Mm-hmm.
She's lost her husband, she's lost her father, she's lost her son.
Just like us, there are good ones and bad ones.
The one he's travelling with. The one with the red beard. He led the raid on my village.
Oh, Ollie.
How can he trust him?
A man has to make hard choices. Choices that might look wrong to others, but you know are right in the long run.
You believe that?
With all my heart.
Hmm. There's our boy. The second best character this season.
Hardhome.
Here we go. That is a large camp. That's a very large camp.
Gather the elders and let's talk.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
That is the wildling way.
My ancestors would spit on me if I broke bread with a crow.
So would mine, but fuck 'em, they're dead.
This is the way. I'm a torment.
Oh my god, it's the Mandalorian. This is the way, but it actually means something. Oh my god.
I fucking hate thens.
Fuck the fence.
I'm right behind you, I promise.
Well, she's dying this episode.
Go on.
That's the kiss of death. That is absolutely the kiss of death. I know TV shows. You can't fool me. Or they're dying. Either way.
I feel like I'm watching a refugee film.
It has got that vibe to it.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Time for a big fight. Oh, those dogs, those are cute dogs. John doesn't have his coat on. He's ready to fight.
Is this an avalanche? Do we have a natural disaster?
Oh no. Yeah, I think it's a bit more sinister than that. Oh my god, Oldman. Oh Jesus.
Shut the gate.
Shut the gates! It sucks, but it's needed. Ooh. That's not a pleasant sound. Oh no, don't do that. Don't put your face near that. You're just right for a sword to go through your eye. Oh. Oh boy. Oh Jesus. Oh, crushing the skull. Go crushing finale. Man, John's so fucking good. What a guy.
They're gonna let them pass the wall even if you're not there.
You have my word. I've given orders.
Don't think you're gonna be there to enforce those orders.
She's not wrong. Not wrong. Go on, lads.
That is some shocking weather.
Ooh, those boats were moving. That is a bad storm. Oh boy.
Ugh.
Oh Jesus. You on jump? Oh god. Oh. Oh Jesus.
Jesus. Crushed under the boots.
He's a big lad. Hello.
I'm sure this is going to go very well.
Yeah, big heavy weapons aren't exactly the best in one-on-one combat.
Oh, that would wind you so badly.
Oh, that. Yeah, that's gonna fucking. I'm surprised he's already up, to be honest. Don't think you'd last. I don't think you'd be able to get up that quickly.
Adrenaline, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh my! Is that still infused with dragon glass or something?
It's Valerian steel.
Yeah.
And there's the Night King.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. Interesting new information there. Yeah, guys, I think this is a bit of a losing battle.
Oh!
Oh no! Oh, the music here is really good. Fucking hell. Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
Oh,
that's awful. I don't think that was her actual kids. They just look like them.
No, they're not actual kids. It's just she can't.
No,
she just doesn't have
it. Just that
to...
one looked a lot. They looked a lot like her.
Were you saying all wildlings are the same?
It was a young blonde girl that looked exactly like her daughter.
Oh my god, look at that.
Fucking hell, oh my god! Jesus. Yeah, John, I think just get out of there. You just gotta go. Jesus. Oh, fuck. Is the right word. So, and you gotta get out of there.
Oh, that gate's coming down.
Yeah, they're just gonna go. It's just a losing battle.
It's just a tsunami.
Yeah. Come on, mate. Get your fat ass out of there. Jesus. Oh my god. Oh no, not the giant. Come on. We're gonna need that. It would suck to give the White Walkers a giant on their army.
Yep.
I don't think. Oh, you're not making it, mate.
He's had a rough day.
He's had a rough day.
That's me walking home from work yesterday.
Ah, sucks. This sucks. Sorry. Who's gonna be walking, presenting themselves with the Night King? That's your final boss.
Hmm.
I recognize this shot. Jesus. Fuck hell.
Alright, Callum, your thoughts on Hardhome?
That was pretty darn good. That actually might be I think that is comfortably the best episode of the season.
Yep.
First half was actually really good. There was a lot of really good conversations, a lot of really good dialogue. Second half then was exactly what I kind of wanted. A whole half hour devoted to John and the recruitment of the wildlings, and then the efficient destruction of the land from the White Walkers, building even bigger army.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was a very, very, very comfortably great episode.
Yeah, this is in terms of episodes from quote unquote the bad seasons, so seasons 5, 6, 7, and 8, this is probably my favorite. It's very unique, and it's an episode you can only really do once.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I really like it. I have a couple of niggles with the episode, unfortunately, but overall it's really strong, and it's pretty comfortably the best episode of the season.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
100%.
Rivaled only by the episodes from the good seasons, I'd say.
Definitely.
Yeah, but I thought it was fantastic. I think one of my favorite things about it is that they have set a precedent throughout the first 4 seasons that episode 9 is when you get either a big battle or a big surprise. And in this episode, which was episode 8, we got both at the same time. We got a big surprise and a big battle.
Oh yes. This episode really feels like we've obviously had White Walkers since the first scene of the show, but this really feels like these things are a threat. They are the final. They need to be the final boss. This is the overarching threat that threatens the entire world. This isn't just.
Well, I mean,
this is it.
Talking about how I've mentioned this before, how the White Walkers thematically they represent climate change within the story. That is the allegory of that side of Game of Thrones, and one of the things I really like about what Hardhome does is it it makes you feel the same feeling you would get if there was an avalanche, and it's like the worst and most deadly kind of natural disaster. Obviously, it's with, undead ice zombies. But what I like about the allegory of the White Walkers is that these are us, right? All of the things that we do to the planet come back to shit on us. So it's like dead versions of us coming back to, haunt us, or whatever you want to call it. So it's like, that's kind of the mirror I get from it in terms of the whole concept of the White Walkers, is that every negative bit that people throw into the nature itself, the nature will throw back at you. And that's kind of what I see with the White Walkers, really, is that you have, in a lot of ways, the White Walkers represent a consequence of all of this negative stuff that's been happening within the world, not just within the Game of Thrones canon, like, period of time that the show takes place, but even thousands of years before, like, all of the wars, all the ways they've destroyed land, all the ways that different groups of people have been fragmented, like the Children of the Forest, like the Wildlings, like the First Men, like the Andals, and then, you even go as far to the east, like the Giscari and the Marinese. Like, there's so much there to pull from in terms of the way that the White Walkers represent that looming threat that is universal, and that is what is causing Jon to want to unite all the people. And what makes it so great is that throughout the entire story up to this point, we've shown all the reasons why people don't want to and can't unite. And Jon Snow's job as Lord Commander, knowing about this threat, is trying to find a way to force them to unite by any means necessary. And this episode at the end shows you why. It puts the proof in the pudding as to why that has to happen. Because the threat that the White Walkers show here would affect anyone, regardless of alignment, regardless of political stance, regardless of class, regardless of race, regardless of age. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you believe in. You will not be discriminated by this event, I guess you could say. So I think for me, Hardhome presenting the White Walkers like an avalanche is perfectly tied into that theme of them representing a natural disaster as a result of climate change, which links into the politics of the show. That's one of my big takeaways from this, and one of the reasons why I love it.
I think, this, like I said during the reaction, the two standout characters of this season are Cersei and Jon. And I think this is the episode for Jon that really encapsulates who he is and why he's so vital to the show.
Yep.
He is, without a doubt, he is the everyman. He is the free folk. He is the wildlings. He is the North. He is, the one standing, doing anything it takes. No matter what kind of, tribulations he faces, including in this episode, he'll fight. And that's as simple as that. And that kind of character is so simple, but in this kind of show, is so important.
Well, what's great about Jon up to this point, within the first 5 seasons, is that he isn't bland. He doesn't have that bland archetype that you would associate with those everyman kind of characters. He has a lot of issues, a lot of personal issues that he has to go through. That's, set him apart from your cliched everyman character. One of the best things they ever did with Jon was his pairing with Eirich, because it challenged him as a person. But also, his love with Eirich and also his bond with people like Tormund and Mance Rayder has brought him to really understand why the wildlings need to be on his side, and also gave him that experience of, maybe there is a way. If I can parlay with them, maybe there is a way to bring them to my side. And you'd imagine, after the wildlings at Hardhome witness this massacre, that they pretty much bend the knee for Jon, theoretically speaking. Obviously, they're not going to physically bend the knee, but, you know, what more proof do you need? It's one of those things where no one will believe in the things that you say are going to happen until they happen. Jon Snow is the climate change activist of Westeros, I guess you could say. Trying to unite people of all different backgrounds, including wildlings who were discriminated against for thousands of years behind a wall.
I enjoyed the conflict between Jon and the wildlings in this episode. I thought it was a very natural conversation to have, and I feel like both sides of it are very, like, understandable in terms of coming to these conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of things are always quite enjoyable to watch.
And one of my favorite one-off characters that this episode gives us is Carsey, who is the lead wildling at Hardhome. She's the one with the children. I love the dialogue between her and Jon about the whole thing. Yeah,
you get a really sense, like, just from this one episode, you really get a sense of who she, like, what she values as a character. You know, she's very much a people person in a lot of ways. Obviously, being a mother. You know, I think with her dialogues and her interactions, and her interaction with Jon, even during the fight of, like, you know, if he's not there at the wall when they pass through, then yeah, that could be an issue. And the fact that she recognizes that and sort of understand who Jon is, I think her character, like, no matter how brief it was, it was really well done. She was really well done as a character, and the actress did a really, really great job with it, with how little she got. You know, she got pretty much 20 minutes in one episode of Game of Thrones, and credit to her, because I actually thought there was a lot of her character that I actually quite liked.
Her character went on this whole journey within 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's really good, really enjoyable. You know. Nice to see a really good, even just a brief female character in this show. That's, you know, and there are a lot of really good female characters in this show.
Yep.
There are some others that are not so good.
And I really like the conflict of interest within the wildlings. Because, you know, it's set up when Rattleshirt, also known as the Lord of Bones, has that argument with Tormund about his allegiance to Jon. And then Tormund just kills him straight away. Says, "Get the elders, and we'll talk."
Because he's just not taking it seriously. And this is a moment for being serious. And he was too busy bragging around like his leadership or whatever, or just not having it. And when in this moment, it's very important that they actually talk. And Tormund made that especially clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, this everything to do with this, the last half, like the second half of this episode, really, it was actually really well done. From, I think, everything really. Yeah. The only issues I have with the last half an hour is I think the fight, there are a couple of quick cuts. I think that's sort of been a theme this season where they're trying to do a lot, and the editing booth is doing a lot of to try and make it seem like there's no issues, but it's just there's a lot of quick cutting and shaky cam and all that kind of stuff. Not all of it is terrible, but yeah,
they tried to make it as chaotic as possible in some ways. And
sometimes it works, and sometimes it's you can't tell what's going on at times.
Yeah, it really depends on which part, but yeah, there is a few shortcuts, I guess you could say, that they took. But it's not. I mean, there is a lot of it that's really well directed, though, especially when it comes to like crane shots, panning, slow motion, like all of that stuff's really well done. And like the way everything is unwrapped and revealed is very well, you know, it's very well presented. Like I said before, the way it's presented like an avalanche first, and then you get the slow unpeeling of each element one by one. I really liked the conflict between Carsey and Loboda, who is the Then. How they don't agree at the end of it.
Fucking Fens. I fucking hate Fens.
Yeah. But once Loboda actually sees the White Walkers, he changes his mind very quickly.
No, he fights with Jon very easily.
The one of the more fun elements of the episode was One Weg One Da One, who is the giant.
Mm-hmm.
He was great. He's just like, it's spoken his giant language, said, "What the fuck are you looking at?" I also think some of the dialogue in this is real good. Like it's that whole thing of, it might not be enough, but at least we'll give the fuckers a fight. You know, that sort of thing. In that there's no guarantees, but it's the best chance we've got. That again, once again, it is very reminiscent of a sort of a climate change activists sort of approach to it, of like, there's no guarantees that if we muster up every preventative measure we can to reduce emissions, it might not even be enough, but at least we'll give it a fight, you know, because that's the only chance we have. It's very reminiscent of that. And then there was that whole thing in the wildling camp of, well, what would our ancestors think of us after they were oppressed for so many years? And, you know, Carsey says, well, fuck them, they're dead. In the sense of, you know, times have to change because of circumstances. So yeah, it's a really good negotiation scene that revolves with the dragon glass, and then of course the White Walkers attack. You get a lot of different elements here. You get the whole thing of them having to close the gate, which is the sort of I guess you could call that the trolley problem, where it's you have to sacrifice a certain amount of people to save a certain amount of people.
Yeah, it's in a sense, yeah. This one I feel like it's like, no, you have to close it. Like, it's, if you close it, you're all fucking dead. You need to give yourselves as much time as possible.
Yeah.
And like, the fact that he made that choice so quickly is probably a choice. I feel like, yeah, he had to do that. Because if they don't close it like straight away, then yeah, a lot of the others don't make it.
That's right. And those who were on, and I actually think that's really ironic, given that the wildlings were locked behind a wall, that they're locking their own kind behind a wall of sorts. That is a very interesting parallel. So by sighting the whites, the wildlings on that side of the gate are becoming similar to the Night's Watch, because they see the necessary need for survival.
Exactly. It's a really great parallel to you know, what they call the Southerners.
Yeah.
And then putting up the wall, because they did it for the same reason.
Yep.
To keep out the dead.
I think if I had another complaint about the Hardhome section, Edison Tillett doesn't get any dialogue. He does have that funny moment where he looks at the giant, but he doesn't say anything.
Oh yeah, that was fun. But yeah, he only says "oh fuck" near the end and runs away. I would have liked him to fight a couple White Walkers, you know, because he's sort of like out of all the John Friend characters, he's sort of had the least to do compared to the other three. Obviously, the two that died last season, I felt like had more moments and like were a bit more that had a lot more character. And not like I don't like him at all. I think he's pretty fun. He's got a personality. I feel like it was a missed opportunity to not have him have his own like fighting a White Walker and surviving, kind of thing.
Well,
being clever. And considering he was near the dragon glass, I felt you definitely could have done a scene naturally where he actually kills a White Walker.
The most time he gets as a character up to this point was when he was with Samwell beyond the wall.
Yeah.
Let me guess, you read it in a book.
It feels a bit of a feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity, because especially, like I said, he was near the dragon glass, so was that you naturally set that up for him, to use it. So I'm actually quite surprised they didn't do that.
He is quite underutilized in adaptation though, because in the books he has line after line after line after line. Like whenever you get to a John chapter or a Samuel chapter that he appears in, he's one of the funniest characters. He just comes up with these crackers of lines.
I would like to get to know him more, really.
Yeah. And yeah, he does get his odd little moment here and there, but it's not enough. So on the cliff top, we had the White Walkers riding horses, and they sent an absolutely massive load of whites down the hill near the end. But
yeah, that was pretty insane.
One of the White Walkers jumps down into the hut where the dragon glass is, killed the Then, and then had a fight with John, and we had a very clear distinction, because what happens is the White Walker pushes John off the top level and he gets winded, and that happens after
Very badly.
That happens after Longclaw had been thrown forcefully out of the hut into the snow. And so John picked up one of the random steel swords at the top level to try and defend himself, and the White Walker's ice weapon just burst it. Basically just destroyed it immediately. And after John got winded, he tried to pick up Longclaw and slipped down the hill, which was really well directed, actually. And the way that they did the sound, where it was almost like that sort of, you know, when you're downed in Call of Duty and you're about to die, it's like that kind of noise, that muffled noise with the piercing whistle in your ears. You know, very much in dire straits. But he picks up Longclaw, stands up, swings the sword at the ice weapon. It makes that pinging sound, and it hits. And both him and the White Walker are surprised. Neither of them expected that to happen. John swings around and slices the White Walker, and it bursts into ice cubes and dies.
Yes.
So what do we make of that?
A bit of luck there, obviously, with it being there. I've been picking it up after he leaves with the amount of damage that's happened. But I think it's an interesting detail to learn that there are other weaknesses, or there's a relation between Dragonclaws and Valyrian steel, perhaps, maybe.
I would like to point out that earlier in this season they have devalued Valyrian steel massively. because Jorah Mormont decides to go to Old Valyria, which is not supposed to be accessible in the slightest. But I digress. If we go by book canon of what Valyria is supposed to be, which George Martin has confirmed, and it's apparently suggested to be that way in House of the Dragon, if we ignore, you know, what happened earlier this season, Valyrian steel is so rare that you can't even make it anymore. What do we know about Valyrian steel? It comes from Old Valyria, where... What is significant about Old Valyria? It's where the Targaryen dragons come from. And they say that, you know, the book series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. The elements of ice and fire being the yin and yang, I suppose you could say, the parallels. The White Walkers represent ice, the dragons represent fire. Valyrian steel comes from the dragon's home, as does dragon glass comes from dragon stone. So there are links there in the sense that fire and ice are elements that are very relative to each other within this universe. And Valyrian steel is a symbol of fire, and a White Walker is a symbol of ice, and the Valyrian steel sword was able to destroy a White Walker, so that tells you a lot. And it doesn't do it with dialogue, it does it completely with action in the middle of a fight. I think that's really impressive. That's a really impressive way of revealing something to the audience without telling them. There's also the element of Carsey and having children that she put on that boat, kissing them goodbye, and she sees those White Walker children, and she can't bring herself to kill them, and she gets massacred by them and then resurrected afterwards.
Yeah.
With blue eyes.
One of them reminds me a lot of a dead zombie in the Walking Dead Telltale game, because there's a zombie specifically that looks like a kid like that. I think it looked like a character named Duck. It wasn't the actual character, but it reminded me a lot of that, with like sort of like the exposed like chest with like the bones coming out and stuff, and the sort of like pale skin, like very darkened skin and stuff. Very
creepy.
Yeah, very, very creepy. Very brutal way to go out, getting just on the floor and just getting eaten alive. It's not I don't imagine it's pleasant.
It's evidently clear that the whites cannot swim. They cannot survive in the ocean because all the ones that are thrown in the water by the giant disintegrated.
Yeah, so yeah, water is a neat weapon to use then.
It's almost like that game
So
you play
King's
as...
Land, yeah.
It's almost like the game you play as a kid with like fire, water, ice.
So what you gonna do? Just build a castle, put a moat all around it, and you're fine.
Anyway,
but one thing also is they established that they lost the bag of dragon glass.
yes, they
lost.
did. They did, yes. Which Sam went all the way beyond the wall to the Fist of the First Men to find.
Yeah. And now it's all gone.
That's correct.
As far as we know, unless one of them picked up a piece, perhaps, but I guess we'll see if they did or not.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the Night King walks down to the dark side, raises his arms in the air, and raises the dead to stunned silence.
Very creepy.
Yep. I'll tell you a funny story about that. So, 2019, which was the year of Season 8, just before Season 8 came out, there was a Game of Thrones pub quiz I went to with my friend from work. And basically it was 8 rounds, 7 rounds of the seasons, and then there was 1 round for the books. In the middle of the pub quiz, there was a costume competition. So if you dressed up as a Game of Thrones character, you'd go on stage and present to everyone. There was a lot of people at that quiz, but there was only a few people that did the costume thing. I think it was only 4 actually. And me and my mate, we were 2 of them. And so there was the guy who was hosting the quiz seemed really drunk, and he was really annoying actually, and no one really liked him. He was dressed as Jon Snow. Then there was a girl who dressed as Daenerys, and she had like these little origami dragons attached to her clothing.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yep. Then there was someone else dressed as, God, I can't remember what it was now. There was someone else dressed as something. And then me and my mate, Andrew, we went to a store called Look Sharp. It's like where you can buy lots of costumes and whatnot. He bought a White Walker costume, and I bought a Night King costume. And obviously the body parts were really cheap, but we had the masks that were accurate. And we wore them on our faces. And 2 of them got knocked out. So my mate, Andrew, got knocked out. And then I think the guy, I couldn't remember who he was, got knocked out. So it came down to me and Daenerys. And she got interviewed by Jon Snow about it. She said a few things. When Jon Snow tried to interview me, I just didn't say anything because the Night King doesn't speak. And then, I was aware enough, I'd heard enough chatter about how annoyed everyone was about how this host was just making lots of cringe jokes and whatnot, and people were chuckling when I wasn't responding to him and he was getting annoyed at me. And
but it's obvious what you're doing. That's honestly fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and then the best part was I turned around and I looked at the audience and I raised my arms in the air, like the Night King does in this episode. I got like the biggest round of applause I've ever seen. The entire bar stood up and shouted and screamed and clapped. And I got a landslide victory in that competition, and I won myself.
What an absolute ego boost! Yeah, my god!
I won myself like a $400 speaker from that.
Fucking hell!
Yeah. And I didn't really have much use for it, so what I did was I sold it to my friend Daniel, and he has it now.
What a story.
And he paid for all my food when we went to the Gold Coast in Australia later that year. So there we go.
Funny.
$400 worth of food and other stuff like Ubers and whatnot. Yep, that was a crazy night, and we almost won. We came like tied for. There was like I think there was like 7 teams tied for first, and there was like 10 teams tied for second, and we were tied for second. And I hadn't read the books at that point. If I had, I would have gotten like probably a perfect score. There was one question that really pissed me off, because they asked us who are the ones in King's Landing that they worship the faith of the Seven, or the Light of the Seven, or whatever it is. And we said the Faith Militant, which is correct, and they wrote the only correct answer is the Sparrows. And that's just a load of bullshit, because it's both. Both is correct. Like it is.
Yeah, I would have said the Sparrows. Yeah, I would have personally said the Sparrows, but they're both named that. Those are both names they have.
The Sparrows, once they come to King's Landing, they become the Faith Militant. So that is also a correct answer.
That's what they're referred to in the show as well.
Yeah. So I was really pissed off about that. Oh, and also another thing that I nearly I kicked myself with. We couldn't remember that the guy with the rat bucket was called the Tickler in Harrenhal. We couldn't remember his name was the Tickler. That pissed me off so much. I couldn't remember that. Anyway, that's my story about how I won a $400 speaker by raising my arms as the Night King. And I had to wait. I had to wait until we did this review to talk about it. Like when we started doing Game of Thrones, it was 1 year removed from when I did that. So I've been waiting all this time to tell you that story. Anyway, that was a fun time. You want to know something that's really special about Hardhome that you probably wouldn't expect. This was a Dave and Dan idea.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep.
What, when they kind of understood John's character? Wow.
So in the book A Dance with Dragons, there's a bunch of missions they do beyond the wall, and John gets a distress call from Hardhome, but he never goes there. But it is implied subtly to the audience that the reason why he's getting a distress call is because the wildlings there got ambushed by White Walkers. But in the show, what they decided to do is they decided to have John try and get the wildlings on his side, and then they get ambushed. So it is based off something, but this whole thing of going to Hardhome and this whole scene is completely a creation from David Benioff and Dan Weiss. And it's so strange because they do such great things like this, but then they also do such bad things as well. It's very confusing. This is the same season they killed off Barristan for no reason, and yet they come out with Hardhome.
So strange. What a weird season.
It's just very bizarre, the things that they are good at and the things they're not. But I have to give hats off to them because they did a really good job with this one.
Absolutely. Gotta give credit when it's due.
Yeah. I think we should also talk about the scene that sets up this as well. There's a scene at Castle Black that sets this whole Hardhome thing up with Sam, Gilly, and Ollie. So, obviously, the whole sex scene in the last episode, it's weirdly timed, obviously, because it comes right after those brothers tried to rape Gilly and Sam saved her. And then for some reason she wanted to have sex, which I don't believe that. Sam was asking if she was okay, and it's like, it's just a weird thing to think they're having this conversation after they've just fucked. Like, it's just, I don't know how to feel about that part of it. But what I will say is that the conversation that, as soon as Ollie entered the room, it was a great scene. Because you see the look he gives Gilly, because she's a wildling. When he sees her, he sees the people that killed his parents and his whole village. Which is like, it's this inbuilt prejudice. It's this really deep-rooted hatred for essentially a race of people, like a tribe, really. It's this tribalistic thought he's having. And he's a kid, you know? He doesn't know better. He's a kid that's gone through something really traumatic.
No, like he lost his family. Like, it's totally understandable why he feels the way he feels. It's like...
Yeah. And obviously, Sam doesn't have the ability to really unwind all that trauma. It's too complicated to really convince Ollie, it's sort of beyond repair, to be honest. Because the damage that was done to Ollie during that event, that traumatic event in his life, is something that you can't really get rid of. It's going to be there forever. And Ollie tries to get Sam to help him make sense of it all. And Sam, you know, he means well in the best way. And the things that Sam says are true, but they're not the kind of things that are going to help Ollie understand.
Yeah, it's if for a kid to try and understand that is not every kid is going to understand that. And for Ollie, it's like his family and friends and everybody he probably knew his young life, they were all brutally murdered, and he had to run away. They fucking sent him to the wall. So like him having this feeling towards them is like, yeah, it's natural. Not every kid is going to be so forgiving. You know, it's very traumatic for him. But Sam is also not incorrect in like, this is something, it's a risk that they have to do, because if they don't, they stand no fucking chance. As we saw in this episode, they have a fucking massive army that is going to come here and kill everybody if they don't, you know, band together. It's a really interesting conversation.
Yeah,
and I'm honestly intrigued where it's going to go.
Yeah, because it's
I have a strong feeling there's going to be a breaking point for Ollie, especially if he sees John again, and he's going to probably be more and more pissed off when he eventually sees the amount of wildlings that have come through, and there might be a breaking point. We shall see.
Yeah, that's another thing that's interesting about David Dan is Ollie is a show creation. You know, he's a character that was made for the show because season 4 needed filler. You know, it didn't actually have enough source material to fill out because they wanted the Battle at the Wall to be episode 9, so they had to find something for Eirich and Tormund to do throughout season 4 before they got there. And so they created this Ollie character that existed in the Gift with that whole farmland. And it's given a really interesting angle on this whole conflict with the wildlings. Because here you have this kid who's tied up in all of this stuff. And you know, this kid who killed Eirich and thought that John would appreciate him for defending the wall. And John was just heartbroken because it was the woman he loved, obviously, but Ollie thinks he's doing the right thing by defending the wall against the wildlings, and now he hears this news that they're going to be let through. It's like, it makes him feel like John is aligning with the enemy to him. You know, the enemy who killed his family. And then when that
raided Castle Black a season ago.
Yeah. And then you hear that line where he says to Sam, "Do you really believe that?" You know? And I think that this is the most frustrating thing about Ollie, and it's one of the reasons why there's a lot of fans that really hate his character. But it's something you have to understand about children, is a lot of them operate on a binary, and they just can't process that level of complexity.
Yeah, not every kid is the same, and like this, there's absolutely a world where this kid has these feelings toward, you know, the people that murdered his entire livelihood. That is his reaction is very, very realistic. Yeah, like I completely understand where Ollie is coming from. I agree with Sam that we have to fight with even people we don't even entirely trust in order to live. But his concern and disdain for the wildlings is completely understandable.
Yeah. It obviously doesn't justify the prejudice, but you understand why the prejudice exists.
Yeah, exactly. Like his family's dead. Like last season,
but you also
murdered by Thens and wildlings.
But you also got to contextualize, and this is again something that Ollie can't understand because he's too young. Is that the reason why the reason why the wildlings are these beastly savages is because they've been locked out of the world and they have to survive. They're desperate.
Yeah. Exactly. And they were commanded to do these things, you know, by people. There's a lot more context to it than just they decided to randomly butcher this family farm and people around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a very interesting scene.
Yeah, real good. And I just really like the way John Bradley plays Sam as well, like the way he goes, Ollie.
Yeah. Ollie.
They're people too, just like us. Yep. So, that's the Night's Watch stuff out the way. Really good, for the most part. Really good stuff. All right, what should we move on? Oh, let's talk about Marine, actually. I think we should revert to the top of the list, talk about Marine. We had the scene in the, I guess you could call it the throne room. Tyrion brings Jorah to Daenerys.
Yes.
It's a very interesting scene. This is probably the most intelligent conversation Tyrion has had this season.
Yeah, honestly, I actually was really surprised by this scene because I was worried that this kind of scene was not going to be taken as seriously as it should have. But thankfully they did. And I think Tyrion's dialogue in this scene was actually really, really strong.
The way he sort of...
And Emily Clark's acting in this scene was also very good.
Yep, the way he guided Daenerys through the thought of what do we do with Jorah Mormont and answered her questions in very interesting ways that she wouldn't have thought of. He thinks outside the box in a way that she doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, he is very understandable and a very logical way of going about it in terms of describing Jorah Mormont's perspective and sort of his actions and what has happened. I feel that was a very smart conversation to have, and coming to a reasonable conclusion, because Tyrion obviously wouldn't want Jorah to be killed because he doesn't hate him. He thinks he's a good person. But he can't go unpunished because he did lie for years to Daenerys. I thought it was a very, very intelligent conversation to have, which is, for a scene in Marine, is welcomed, really. Just imagine if a certain person was dead, though. It'd be very interesting if they were also in this scene.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine the conversations
oh, my God.
two particular characters could have.
Oh, dude, if Barristan was in the scene, that would have been so good.
Imagine the conflict between him and Tyrion in this scene. He's having him be the sort of like angel and devil talking about Jorah and his sort of actions, and him being he could talk about him actually being here and the amount of time he was here. Tyrion wasn't here. You didn't, the amount of advice he gave, the amount of, I thought that would have been a really interesting conversation if he was still alive.
And then Barristan could say, your sister sent me here. She sent me to my grave, and I chose to join here. Barristan would associate Tyrion. Barristan would associate Tyrion with his enemies.
Like they could have a scene of like literally him talking about you felt comfortable coming here after your family threw into a cell to die. That kind of shit. The fact that you were more than capable and you were more comfortable being Hand of the King than anything else in life. Only now you feel the need to beg to be here, that kind of shit. Also, that would have been really, really intriguing.
One of my favorite things that this scene does with Jorah Mormont's character and the way that he's presented and the way that Tyrion speaks about him is that it basically presents the sort of conundrum, the weird conflict that comes with having an anxious attachment to someone. Jorah Mormont is a very insecure person, and that's why a lot of his motives can seem very contradictory and confusing to someone like Daenerys, because everything that he does comes across as very loyal to her, and yet he has been disloyal to her because he's concerned about what she will think if he tells her the truth.
Yeah.
Because he's not interested in telling the truth, he's interested in maintaining that trust with her. And by trying to do that, he's actually pushed her away further aggravating that anxious attachment, which then later in this episode, when he goes back to, I think his name is Yazanzo Quaggas, he's the guy who owns the slaves for the fighting pits. he once again wants to fight for her, even though she's just banished him again. So he's being very persistent with it. You know, he doesn't care if he gets killed. He doesn't care what the consequences are. This is his purpose. You know, he idolizes her and he is infatuated with her to arguably a toxic level because he is so attached. And he explained it.
It's definitely toxic, but I feel like his character is this need to really redeem himself in a lot of ways, not just to Daenerys, but as his own honor as a person.
Yeah,
you know.
And I've loved Ian Glenn's acting this season because he's so different to what he was before.
This episode especially, that first scene with him was like, there was a moment where I thought he was actually in tears. He wasn't, but he had that emotion on his face as if he was, because so much going through his mind of him like regretting so much about not telling her. But you know, as Tyrion says, there's obviously like there were reasons behind it from his perspective why he didn't. Like, again, this was probably the most interesting scene in Marine for like in so long
since Jorah got banished last season.
Yeah, it's probably up there with probably the best scene because the dialogue and acting in that scene in particular were on a very high standard.
Some of the scenes in season 4
been sorely missed for Marine for so long.
There's a few scenes in season 4 in Marine that are pretty damn good, though. I will say that. But that's season 4. That's a different level. But yeah, the way he doesn't have that stoic presence anymore. He doesn't have that sort of tenderness. He's very desperate. And the way he shakes when he speaks, the way sometimes he can't maintain eye contact because he's so ashamed of himself. It's quite an unsettling performance in some ways because he's just so desperate, and you can tell there's so many reasons for it, and they tie that into his grayscale as well because he's like, well, I have grayscale, I don't have that long to live. Clearly, how long am I going to have? I might as well do what I'm going to do regardless, because if they kill me, what difference does it make? You know, I'm gonna die anyway.
Yeah.
So I might as well just do it regardless. He has nothing to lose.
Yeah. Well, it's a great scene. Really good scene.
But it's also, again, reflecting his toxicness of his sort of anxious attachment. He's not respecting her boundaries because he keeps on coming back even though she tells him to don't come back.
Yeah. She's giving him chance after chance to live, and he's just not following it at all. And she's getting more and more pissed off. But she is slowly, in some ways, getting her wall broken down just a bit.
Yep, because as soon as
how devoted he is.
As soon as he leaves the room, she breaks down. Like a little bit.
Yeah. Because deep down she does care.
Yeah. But she's just very, very hurt by what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that opening scene was a banger. It was great.
Yeah, it was. Very, very good.
But there was a scene with Tyrion and Daenerys at the wine table, you could say.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings on this scene. There's things I like about it, and there's things I don't. I think my biggest issue with this scene is that it once again demonstrates Daenerys' really inconsistent ideas. And this is something we've seen a lot of throughout this season, is how inconsistent she is with what she wants. And this whole speech about breaking the wheel is very... It seems like a cool bit of conceptual dialogue that
it's a good
fits
line.
With,
it's a good line.
It's a good line, very memorable, but I don't feel like I understand really what she wants after the scene any more than I did before it.
It just seeming like, from what you say from that, it's like you want to eradicate all the other families and be on top.
But also the other thing is that
I want to break the wheel.
it also felt like this scene was just giving them another excuse to keep her in the East for longer.
Seemingly. For at least another season.
Yeah. And I think there was a bit
because I know, because obviously the only 2 episodes of Game of Thrones I watched before we started this was first episode of season 7 when they go to a certain place, and obviously the Long Night.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there might be at least another season of Marie, which would suck. Oh my god. Yeah, it's if they try and just keep on spinning this marine wheel for another season, it's gonna get extremely tedious, and it already is at this point.
Well, they haven't really resolved any of the conflicts, have they?
No, it's still all the shit is still going on.
We don't know who's behind the harpy at all.
No, that wasn't even talked about this episode. You'd have thought they would. I feel like that's a missed opportunity as well. I imagine they will at some point, but yeah, that's strange. And the fact that obviously we mentioned the fact that if only he was alive, but the fact they didn't even mention Barrister.
Yep, you've got Barristan dying, you got Grey Worm getting stabbed, you got the dragons locked up, and one of the dragons is flying around free. You got her marriage to Hizdahr Zolarak, you've got the fighting pits, you've got the harpy, you got Dori Naharis, you got the ships that are in the, the Yunkish ships, I should say. There's the slaving outside the city.
Yeah, surely you mentioned those.
There's Jorah Mormont as well. Like, there's so much going on. There's a lot of moving parts. And the funny thing is that in the books, there's like, that's not even half of the things that are going on in Meereen. It's like even more stuff. It's absolutely insane. Like, I think in A Dance with Dragons, Daenerys has like 12 chapters or something. And then if you include the other characters that are in Meereen, like Barristan, who has 4, and then you've got Tyrion, who has a few chapters outside Meereen, then you got Quentyn, who has a few in Meereen. It's it seems like half the bloody book is in that place. But of course, there's so much more content, and George Martin really fleshes out the world of Meereen in the books, whereas in the show it's very downsized.
I imagine so. Meanwhile, in this show, it's probably the most boring part of the show.
Well, I'd say it's better than Dawn, but not by a massive amount.
That's true, but we've hardly been in Dawn at all.
Yeah.
We spent a lot more time in Meereen and hardly anything happening. These with Dawn, as shit it is right now, hopefully it's brief and we're not there for another 2 seasons.
I do think Dan and Dave are trying to do the really witty dialogue with Tyrion again, but it's a little ham-fisted. Like the whole thing of like, I'm a terrible person, you are a terrible person, and we're here to sort out the more terrible people. And it's that very sort of pessimistic humor.
Yeah.
And so it's okay, but I've heard better lines from Tyrion. There's more clever things he could say than that.
Possibly, yeah.
Then of course he references the fact that he crossbow bolted Tywin, and says, if I was to ever tell you the reason why, I'd have to have more wine in a different place. It's like, firstly, does that conversation ever happen? And secondly, when it does happen, does he ever bring up Tysha? Which is one of the most important things about his character. The fact that Tywin stopped him from marrying that girl when he was 16.
Yeah.
Of course, they won't bring that up because they changed the context of that in the show and they made it all about Shay instead, which was absolutely dumb. And they...
Yay!
Instead of Tyrion and Jaime being at odds and in conflict, they're just best buds. Yeah. So... most of the Meereen stuff, especially in regards to Jorah Mormont, was real good. Tyrion's job interview was really funny. But
yeah,
I just think, I think there's elements of Daenerys' character in the break the wheel scene that they're just not fully formed. And part of that's to do with how the season has written her leading up to this episode. Although I do like the whole thing of we both have terrible fathers. It's like, this is how we relate. We have terrible fathers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can't always have... Meereen has to have some issue somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, there was one thing I forgot to mention about Hardhome. there was that line where they asked how Mance Rayder died, and Jon Snow, instead of explaining it, he had to really like stamp it in the ground. I put an arrow through his heart.
Yeah, rip the band-aid off.
Yeah. Obviously, Tormund explained it after.
I like that a lot.
But
the way
you
he
can
described it.
Yeah, but you can tell that, like, there was that look in Jon's face where he's like, I killed your leader. You know, I did that. And that kind of, that is that sort of, that arrogance that he still has a bit of, that he had a lot of in season 1. He still holds some of that arrogance and that sort of, especially now that he's Lord Commander. I mean, you look at the way he spoke to Janos Slynt when he was about to execute him. Obviously, the context there is different because he's dealing with someone who's disobeyed his commands, but Jon definitely feels very proud of the fact that he gave retributive justice to Janos Slynt. And in the scene with Mance Rayder, it was mercy, but I think Jon wanted to strike some fear into them. A little bit,
yeah. A little bit of just getting it over with.
Not the smartest thing to say, because he could have been killed right then and there. But he was already taking a risk going there anyway, so you might as well go all the way with it. Alright, let's talk about some great stuff again. We had the scenes in Cersei's prison cell in King's Landing.
Those were awesome.
With Septa Unella and Qyburn. Loved everything. Everything about King's Landing was great.
Oh, yes.
Lena Headey's disheveled performance and that sort of her, her messed up hair and the whole refusing to confess, protecting her family, asking about where her son is, learning about Kevin Lannister coming back but not going to see her, and then the little detail of like Qyburn mentions the things they want her to confess and she says all lies, and Qyburn gives that look of well, I know that they're not lies. Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, wink, wink, and nudge, nudge.
I think my favorite part was obviously the whole thing of her wanting to speak to her son is there's an element of he's the king, he could get me out of here, but it's also I just want to see him. I want to see my boy.
Yes, there's you very much get the sense of, she very much is now in worry of her boy, of her last son,
Mm-hmm.
And considering after hearing the information that he's not seeing anybody, not eating, that's going to be very concerning.
Yeah. Especially because...
And that sort of establishment of Tormund sort of, it seems like he's going to start breaking down into like his entire world. With the amount of information he's had to deal with so far in such a short amount of time, it's sort of all breaking down for him. And there's a real fear that he could get very, very lost.
And this is something that Joffrey would have never done. He would have fucking burned the set to the ground to get Marjorie and his mother out. He would have massacred every sparrow in sight. I will gut those cunts! And not only Joffrey, but Robert Baratheon wouldn't stand for it either. But of course, Tommen is too weak and he's too timid. He's not a lion yet. He's just a cat, and that's why I mean they don't show it as much because obviously it's too hard to direct. But the reason why they have Tommen have a kitten is because a kitten is like the polar opposite of a lion, and that's who Tommen is. He is a kitten, Lannister. He doesn't have the big roar. He's a tiny little meow. And when he tries to show the roar of the lion, no one takes him seriously. But I think the most upsetting part of the scene was when Cersei had to drink water off the floor. The fact that Queen Cersei
very gross.
Had to drink water on a dirty prison floor. It's very grotesque. It's almost like she's in heaven sent, actually, because they're asking her to confess.
Yeah.
They're just torturing her over and over and over and over again. And Septa Unella is the what's it called? The bloody... Oh, my brain's blanking. The Veil. But yeah, I think... So you talked before about, one of the reasons why Jon's one of the best characters is, like, his position as an everyman, but also with the challenges he has to go through, the really complex moral dilemmas of why he has to make decisions he makes. And then with Cersei, a lot of her conflict is very internal. It's very personal to her.
Yes.
She has a very
Definitely,
grey. She has a very grey character. There's a lot going on there, and just the performance is absolutely outstanding. Like Lena Headey is she just knocks it out of the park. You know, she's fully dedicated to this role, and not like in a cringy Jared Leto way, where it's all like unnecessary method acting. I think like Lena Headey just does it in a really graceful way, where she's able to just really get in character to the point. You know, you've mentioned before about how David Tennant is one of those actors where he can make a character feel like a real person. I feel like Lena Headey does that with Cersei a lot. Whenever I watch Cersei scenes, I believe it's a real person.
Definitely. She's just so ingrained to the character and how she performs. To the similarity of how I describe like David Tennant, like there's such a believability about these kind of actors where I don't think about them performing, I think about the character as if they are real in terms of how they're acting. It's just, head and shoulders, it's brilliant to watch.
Yep, it really sets them apart massively. Then we got a bit of esoteric storytelling in Bravos with Arya, Jack and Agar, with the oysters, the clams, the cockles, and the waif obviously is there too. I thought this was very intriguing, actually.
I thought it was quite unique in terms of how a scene was structured.
Yeah, it's like this whole different side of it's like this little side story that's completely cut off from the rest of the story. It's very contained, and they use
we're seeing her be more in tune with what she needs to become and not become, really, in a sense.
What I loved about it, the way that they layer the dialogue, because they have to do this a lot with the Faceless Men, and especially with Jack and Nagar, is that they present it as at first, it seems like, oh, Jack and Nagar somehow magically knows that she has to go find something, right? That's what it seems like at first, you know? You've been going down to this lane, and he hits her when she doesn't say the truth, and she corrects herself. But he says, you're going to turn right instead of left. And at first, it seems like Jack and Nagar knows what's there and wants her to see it. But then it's revealed at the end of that whole sequence that actually Jack and Nagar doesn't know. It's not about him knowing. It's about him wanting to see her find something and invest it. Like it's the whole thing of he's aware of what Bravos is like, obviously the culture of it. But it's the fact of he knows that she will find something that will aid her training. He has this trust in the many-faced god that it will present her all these different scenarios when she plays these different roles. And she plays this, oyster seller, and she sees the crime that happens, the sort of the, I need to feed my family, I can't, blah, blah, blah. Can I sell this to you? And the man who eats the oysters refuses him. It's a very, it seems like a very unfair scenario. And Arya comes back and says, "Well, what happens next?" And he says something along the lines of, "A man has no idea what a girl would see." She is the one that discovered the scenario, not him. And then from that, Jack and Hagar comes up with, "This is what I want you to do about it." So what I love about it is it's not a completely prepared assignment, because if you're going to be a faceless man, you have to be able to react spontaneously to something that you can't predict. And so this small sample of it is showing, I want you to find something that I don't know exists and then tell me what it is. And then you can do something about it. And that is really what this is all about, I think. And yeah, the only thing about Bravos that's pissing me off a little bit is the waif's jealousy. It just doesn't fit right with me. I don't like that there is a rivalry there. I'd much prefer it if they got along and they were able to tell each other stories about their past and whatnot. Obviously, the waif's, is what I said true or not from the previous episode was great, but just the whole thing of she sees Arya progressing and she takes an issue with it. I just don't like this rivalry. It's just weird. I don't think it works. But apart from that, I thought that the Braavos stuff was quite intriguing with Arya. And it seems like it's almost like this is not complete yet. This was just one segment of the story they're telling. So yeah, what did you think of what they did in Braavos?
I actually quite liked it. I thought it was quite unique, the sort of way it was structured for them, and it feels like this plot line is slowly starting to pick up momentum a little bit. But yeah, I need a bit more. I need a bit more from it. But I liked what they did here in the episode with how they structured these sort of scenes together in the dialogue.
Yeah, that actor who plays Jaqen H'ghar is quite good at what he does. He's very unique.
He is very good. He is very good.
He has this enigmatic aura about him which perfectly fits the Faceless Man. And it's taken us quite a while to get to the point of her finally doing stuff, but now she is doing it. And so what this will eventually lead to is, we'll have to see, what comes of this assignment that she's doing as she's selling oysters, clams, and cockles in the Braavos Bay in the harbour. The only thing we have left to talk about is Winterfell. We have a couple of scenes in Winterfell. We firstly have the scene where Reek blurts out to Sansa that he didn't kill Bran and Rickon and that it was just farmers' boys. So Sansa somehow is forcing Theon out of Reek. She is forcing the Theon that he thought never didn't exist anymore.
Because he's being faced with what he done. Even though he didn't kill Bran and Rickon, he still killed 2 farm boys and betrayed Robb.
Yep.
And that's all of the things that happened to him with Ramsay. He's sort of being like thrown in his face, and he's sort of been forced to be broken down, which I think is quite. I think it's been really well done for him as his character.
Yeah, there's a bit more to it in the books, because there's an implication in the books that one of the farm boys was one of his, it was a bastard child he had. Obviously, one of the things about Theon is that, Theon's got a big cock. Theon likes to have sex. That's something that they established very early on in the story. And one of the big sort of subtle dilemmas they do with Reek in this part of the books is that he had to kill one of his own children to try and get the Ironborn to believe in him. And it never worked, and he regrets it. But still, even without that, he'd still killed 2 innocent boys regardless. But it's that moment where Theon reveals to Sansa that Bran and Rickon, he never killed them. And that he lied and pretended that he killed them. Which is a big sort of realization for Sansa. I did notice in the reaction you mentioned something like that Sansa didn't even have a sympathy.
Yeah, it's just there's no empathy, just zero whatsoever, which I find just very interesting.
Yeah. Very, I guess it's that stark loyalty, right? It's like, if you mess with my family, I don't see any value in you. I guess that's sort of how the pack of wolf mentality works.
Yeah.
But again, it's just such a strange devolution for her character, isn't it? Because she was on the path to becoming a manipulator at the end of season 4.
Yes, and now she's just back to sort of season 2 and 3.
Yeah, well, she's got
sort of a character.
She has matured a bit since then, but she's devolved her IQ, stats, if you know what I mean. Her attributes in the political world have been stripped from her, and she's very much back to being a Stark again, and a vulnerable one at that. But yeah, it's a great scene for Theon though, for sure, because you can see the Theon is coming back out of him after all this time. And he refuses to acknowledge it. He can feel it. He can feel Theon coming back, but he says, "No, not Theon, only Reek." And then he runs out. Because he refuses to become Theon, because he fears that if he becomes Theon again, that Ramsay will torture him again. And he feels like he has to be Reek to keep himself safe. because that's the kind of mental fucked up bullshit that Ramsay has done to him. Another interesting scene in Winterfell, though, was a conundrum, well, not a conundrum, but a sort of a discussion between Roose Bolton and Ramsay about what to do with Stannis. Roose Bolton presents the logical point of view of, we can survive in 6 months here. We have enough rations for that long, and we are behind castle walls, and we can just wait for Stannis' army to freeze to death or mutiny with each other. And, you know, use the scraps, I suppose. Ramsay presents a prideful alternative, is that, well, we can just take them out with 20 good men. That's all I need, not an army. So Ramsay is willing to go out of his way to get it over and done with as soon as possible, to show off, I guess you could say. You know, he wants to just obliterate Stannis through and through without having to wait 6 months. Which is, you know, it's riskier than staying behind castle walls, but I guess that shows the difference between Ramsay and his father. And you'd imagine that if Ramsay is successful in doing so, he will gain a lot of respect for his father. And you've got to remember that with that other child on the way, Ramsay wants to get on his dad's side, you know, his dad's good side as much as he can, because he wants to be the legit heir to the north. And so if he's able to win a battle against Stannis, then maybe Roose Bolton would make him his legit heir, instead of, you know, that child he's having with Walder Bolton, if it happens to be a boy. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting conversation. What did you make of it?
I thought it was very interesting conversation. I thought very interesting for, you know, the character to. I just really liked the scene. Just quite a bit. It was just quite a little interaction between the two.
One thing I will say, though, is any scene in that room in this season just has terrible lighting. It's so... the set dressing is so bad. And thankfully, in Season 6, that gets fixed with a bigger budget.
Mm-hmm. I just really like... I always enjoyed those two interactions, because there's quite a unique difference in how they perform, but them being related, I think, is very, very... it just really sells their relationship is very unique in some ways, you know, in how they talk to each other.
Two different forms of psychopath, father and son.
Yes, that is a very apt way of describing it.
But also in terms of performance, you know, Roose Bolton is very downplayed, whereas Ramsay is very comical.
Mm-hmm.
Roose Bolton's more your classical villain, whereas Ramsay is much more manic, but he has an actual motivation. You know, he's not just crazy for no reason. But yeah, that's all the characters. I think we've dissected it pretty well.
Yeah, I would say so. Very, very big episode.
Yep. The episode received universal acclaim from both critics and viewers.
No shocker there.
With critics calling it the best episode of the series.
Easily, yeah.
Received a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. What value that has, don't know.
None, really.
Well, what 100%
is shit.
Well, a 100% rating just means that everyone who reviewed it gave it a positive score. That's all it means.
They gave it 6 or 10, 6 out of 10 or more.
I think it was 52 reviews, and they all gave it a positive.
Or at least every single one of them thought it was at least decent.
Yeah.
That's the information we get.
Following several episodes of setup, Hardhome blends a sharp script with a spectacular blockbuster action to offer viewers a powerful, game-changing payoff. I would say game-changing is a really good word to use with this episode in regards to the Night King, because it really puts in perspective what this is, what the threat is. Eric Kane of Forbes called this one of the best, most exciting episodes I've seen in the entire show's run, let alone this season, citing high action and a series of pretty crazy revelations. There was a praise for the Tyrion-Daenerys scenes, but predominantly the final sequence where he described it as edge-of-your-seat exciting and also quite terrifying. They called it a welcome reminder that the show is still unpredictable, with McNutt citing it as his favourite episode of the series thus far. Highlighted the character of Carsey as a great addition. Her death hits hard, even if we'd only seen her for a few scenes. The episode received praise even from its usual critics. They wrote, "I feel like I haven't said this in a long time, but last night's Game of Thrones was cool." Cited the quality of the battle scene was unifying theme of hope in desperate situations as the episode's key strengths, specifically that the abused and tormented Sansa learns that her brothers may still be alive, and that though Jon faces the seemingly impossible task of defeating a constantly growing army of White Walkers, he at least possesses a sword that can kill them. Tremendous reaction and is in complete juxtaposition to the episode. So the episode that was 2 weeks ago was Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken. The reaction to this is like absolute polar opposite to what that was. Like when after episode 6, people were saying that Game of Thrones is dead, and then after this, episode 8, people were saying that Game of Thrones is back. Written by David Benioff and Dan Weiss. Directed by Michael Sapochnik, same as last episode. Yeah, I thought the lads did a really good job here, for the most part. I think a lot of the direction was really strong. I loved all the scenes in the prison cell in King's Landing. The scenes in Marine were really well directed. The scenes in Bravos as well were well shot and well edited. And, you know, the scene with Sam was great. And most of the Hardhome stuff was good outside of some of the shaky cam and some of the fast cuts. And outside of the poor lighting, you know, the Winterfell stuff was decent in terms of direction. Some of my favorite stuff was some of the vertical panning they did. So when you talk about the multi-level hut with the dragon glass, some of the reveals they did of all the stuff at Hardhome was really good. Yeah, I think Sapochnik, in terms of direction, achieved a lot with this episode. So I would give a lot of praise. Even if I have a few nitpicks and criticisms of it, I think that overall the direction was really strong, and it was very ambitious. They had to get a lot right.
They did, yes, that is very true.
It certainly could have been a lot worse.
Definitely.
Yeah. Like, I'd still say on the whole, this was very well directed. You know, when you consider everything that was involved in making it, I thought they did a fantastic job. And the cutting between scenes was well done too, especially when they were transitioning in between the prison scenes. And I thought in terms of tone as well, like outside of Hardhome at the end, the first half of the episode had a lot of interior scenes with a few characters. It was very focused on those small conversations, which I really liked.
Yes, it was.
I really liked the element. Oh, one other detail I really liked is when Jorah Mormont walked out of the gates, they changed the focus blur and it went onto the harpy at the wall. That was a really nice detail.
Yeah, very cool. Very well done.
Yeah. You had any thoughts for writing and direction?
I thought writing actually was pretty darn solid for their standard, and I thought the direction was very good as usual, other than bits here and there. I thought, yeah, very much agreed. It was very up to a decent standard, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And how about the music by Raymond Javadi? I noticed that you mentioned him a couple of times this episode.
The music was very good. I think especially in the dialogue scenes, the music did a very good job at building up the tension as scenes went on. I think especially the opening scene is when I noticed it the most.
Yeah, as soon as Mormont leaves the building.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned in the reaction, the way that they use that House of Black and White theme to create emotional beats, it's not just there to be set dressing. They actually use the beats of the song to impact the drama in the House of Black and White. It's a very, very clever piece of music that has so many different purposes. But of course, the two tracks we're going to be listening to for this episode are from the main event section.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Would be shocked otherwise.
The first track is called Hardhome Part 1. Well, that had a lot going for it.
Certainly, fucking hell. That was, very much great horror elements to that track.
Mm-hmm. Very horror inspired
intense.
for sure. You know, it's got bits and pieces of a bunch of horror elements in there. It's got themes of the characters in there. It's got like Game of Thrones theme. It's got the Night's Watch theme. It's got the White Walkers theme in there. It has atmosphere. It has tension. It stops for drama. And it kind of fits the desperation of it, the panic of it, the action of it. And that section, the da, 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 it somehow twists the Game of Thrones theme, which is supposed to sound like medieval adventure, and it makes it seem like this really dire situation. Yeah, it's just brilliant. The strings are powerful. It's full of grunt. It's just so full of confidence, but it somehow blends the sort of medieval theatrics of it with the very sort of gritty disaster as well. As I've explained before, with the sort of the allegory and the tone and the themes of the Hardhome battle, this is the soundtrack to a medieval natural disaster, if you get what I mean, in the sense of the avalanche of the White Walkers on all these people. It represents like a natural disaster in a way. And this song very much fits that to a T. It sounds like refugees being butchered by an avalanche, really, when I hear this song. But it also has the tone of the show too. It has it has the strings, it has the big drums, it has the action, and it has the fantasy drama as well. It has that weird ethereal White Walker noise. It has the broken echoey strings, that ancient sound. Like, there's so much going on. There's so many levels to that music. So I think it's a great piece of music. Dum da dum, dum da dum. Yeah, do you want to add anything?
No, just fucking great track indeed.
Yeah, well, there's more where that came from, because our second track is Hardhome Part 2. soundtrack loaded full of substance.
Yeah, great use of the original like White Walker theme in parts there.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Just a sort of foreboding force.
Yeah, they sort of they use that sad string to represent the sort of the bleakness of it. You know, all those people dying and John witnessing that. With the Night's Watch theme to sort of the charging to the ships to get away, and then once they are on, and that sadness of John seeing all those dead bodies is realized, you get that ancient sound that we saw. I mean, that sound that was, you remember season 4, episode 4, at the end when we saw the Night King convert Craster's baby. It's that similar sort of ancient sound that's really ethereal and different. It's got almost like a crystal ice-like cracking to its noise with the old strings and the horror-inspired strings that they all sound like they're creeping on you like spiders. You know, the way they go like it's all very cracked and broken, and it's as you said before, very horror-inspired. So it's the most impressive thing I think I have to say about Hardhome's music is the way that it balances so many different tones and character themes as well. Like, it does a lot to really emphasize all of the different things that whole scene has to accomplish, and the music sort of ties everything together, really. I think it's a super impressive achievement of music, really, the way that Raymond Chavity scores that whole Hardhome battle with all that going for it.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very, very intense track again. Just completely fits in the episode and that whole half hour. Just brilliant stuff.
So in the book, Cersei is not only accused of fornication, treason, incest, and Robert's murder, but also with the murder of the previous High Septon, who was killed by Osney Kettleblack at Cersei's command. Also the reason why she ends up in prison in the books is different, because Littlefinger has these 3 guys, these 3, I guess you'd call them accomplices, called the Kettleblacks. They're like 3 brothers. And part of Littlefinger's plan to sort of manipulate Cersei is by having the Kettleblacks get involved in her business, and they end up kind of being her simps in a way. And so they basically do all Cersei's dirty work for her, and she lets them sleep with her. You know, she basically uses her womanly ways to get them to do what she wants. And Osney, he runs out of patience and tries to bite off more than he can chew. And she's cited, she's basically cited with him in public, and that's what gets her in prison in the books. The good thing about the show, though, is they found a way around it, and they had Lancel stay in King's Landing and reveal their intimacy to the High Sparrow, which gives a whole different reason for why she's locked. But in the books, she orders Osney Kettleblack to kill the previous High Septon, the one that had to do that naked walk through the streets. Cersei had him killed as well. Yeah. And she was imprisoned for that as sort of blaspheme to the gods. The explanation that the showrunners give for this Hardhome battle is that all of these events happen in the books, but they happen off screen because there's no point of view characters there. Because Jon Snow sends Cotter Pike and a force to go there, and they send ravens to keep Jon informed. And sort of, I would imagine they probably talked to George Martin about Hardhome and sort of what the idea is behind it. And what they decided to do was to just have Jon go there himself, and it kind of shows you what happens as opposed to hearing about it. And I think for the TV show being a visual medium, I think it really works. And also the fact with season 5 is they didn't want to do all 4 missions, so they condensed it down to 1. And it sort of gives this season a different version of the same story. And it all revolves around getting the wildlings south of the wall. It's just, in this version, it's a lot simpler, and it's sort of more condensed down to one thing. Whereas in the books, Jon goes through a lot more complex trials and tribulations and has to deal with a lot more people in his political role. I think that's probably the one thing I would say about Jon in this season compared to the books, is that his political position isn't as challenged because he doesn't have as many people to deal with. That's one thing I really like about both Jon and Daenerys in the Dance with Dragons, is they both get put in positions where they have to deal with a lot of politicians in the books. So with Jon, it's at the Wall, and with Daenerys, it's in Meereen.
Yeah.
And they get really tested, and it's kind of a reaction to, we saw Tyrion do that in season 2, or A Clash of Kings, if you're talking about the books. And Jon and Daenerys basically get their version of it here. But in the show version, it's a lot more condensed. The battle sequence at Hardhome took a full 15 days to film.
Bloody hell.
And involved about 400 X's and 50 stuntmen. Hardhome was built as a fully realized set in Mag Haramon quarry. Not only were the buildings real, but the entire wood log palisade wall, which was 300 feet long and 18 feet high, was all built, and it's all real. At one point, Benioff and Weiss' script for the battle was an even larger scale, showing the army of the dead slaughtering tens of thousands of wildlings camped outside the palisade walls, with vast sweeping camera shots. As they explained, with a chuckle in the behind-the-scenes featurette, they had to rein it back because of the budget. Another example of, in season 6, they have a lot more money. And so that was one of the things where they said, hey, we could have done all these scenes that would have been cool, but we didn't because we couldn't afford to, among other issues. So that's something that, by basically explaining to HBO, hey, look, these are the things that the Hardhome battle didn't do because of the budget you gave us. Could we increase it? And they said yes, because of how successful the show was. You know, how profitable it had been. They managed to negotiate a higher budget for season 6. It's just, yeah, well, I'll get to season 6. I won't explain all of my thoughts, but the fact that it's at this point when they're really running out of source material that the budget increases is a bit of an annoying. It's a bit of an annoying thing to happen. But I guess that's the way the business of it goes, right? You know, the reason why they don't show the Battle of the Whispering Wood and the Battle of the Green Fork in the show is because they couldn't afford it. But what they do instead is they have Tyrion get knocked out and he misses the whole thing. Which is quite funny. In the novels, it is stated that there are only around 200 Valyrian steel weapons remaining in Westeros. That's how rare they are. In the entire continent, there's only 200 of them. You're an expert in talking about plot armor. What did you?
I've been told.
What did you think was the sort of? How well do you think it was handled in this episode?
I think it was relatively fine. I think there are moments where Jon falling off from a pretty big distance on his back, and he, got up relatively quickly. Yeah, he fell down, and it could be to do with like adrenaline and stuff. But that shit fucking if you get thrown from that distance right on your back, you're not getting up straight away. It's that will fucking rock you. Honestly, falling on your back just from feet to back on just any surface like that. I am winded. Anybody's winded. So I thought throughout the plot armor was relatively fine. I don't think it was massively damaging or whatever, but there were moments. Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's not Chibnall level. Don't worry.
Yeah, they probably got away with some of it because of the way they edited it, but it's not it's not as egregious as what we would get much later in the show.
Yeah, even then, and obviously the luck of like the Valyrian store being there just as he's running past it. Obviously, I think it's about sure, but it's that part of the building's been blown off. It could have been flown anywhere. And the fact that obviously he would have known that
Well,
that
I mean,
would have
he's
saved him anyway.
I mean,
but yeah.
he picks it up and falls and drops it in the snow and has to pick it up again. You know, there is a logic
I
to
just
it.
mean just it. No. What I mean is like it being in the first place where it was when he first picked it up. It could have, because I'm not sure where. It could have been anywhere realistically because he didn't have it on at the time. So yeah, as he's running past while winded, there's a bit of luck to it.
Certainly not impossible.
Yeah. No, it's not impossible, but yeah, I think the episode overall did have not like terrible plot armor.
Here's an interesting thing. This is the first episode in the show where Daenerys has criticized the great houses of Westeros, including her own, for their treatment of the small folk.
Interesting.
The paving stone that Lena Headey laps up water from in her prison cell was made from plastic and covered in cellophane to keep it hygienic. Well, that's nice for her. See, what would be toxic method acting is if she did it for real off an actual stone floor. That would be stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, Won, who's the giant, that's his nickname, the original idea for the weapon he was going to use was a whalebone. Like a giant whalebone, but instead he used a log. The biggest 2x4 you've ever seen. The episode Hardhome won several Emmy Awards for 2015, including Outstanding Sound Editing for a Series and Outstanding Sound Mixing for a Comedy or Drama Series. So, viewership. We've been talking about how the ratings have been going down this season, because the first episode got 8 million, and then the last episode we just watched before this one got all the way down to 5.5 million after the Ramsay Sansa wedding episode. It drops down from 8 to 5.5. This episode, Hardhome, 7.01 million.
Nice. So
the gift has been a gift for Game of Thrones, let's just say that.
Yeah, I did think so. And plus, I think, the word would have got round too. But yeah, this is it's a very big. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought there would be a massive bump up after the end of last episode.
What I quite like about this episode is that, I mean, obviously you could potentially predict it to happen. And even before it happened, you basically kind of foreshadowed it. But this episode was not only a shock to the TV show viewers, but it was also a shock to the book readers as well. Because this doesn't happen in the book, so it's a moment where everyone who watched it live, no one saw it, like no one knew it was going to happen before it happened. No one was certain.
And credit does it is a very, very good bloody job.
Yeah. I think it's probably one of Dave and Dan's best original ideas they did for the show, to be honest. It's certainly one of their more interesting ones, and certainly one of their better executed ones, that I'll say that much. But yeah, the viewership has gone back up to 7.01 million. Not the highest yet, the highest was 8, but we have risen significantly since the previous week, which was 5.5. So yeah, well done. Conclusion and rating out of 10 for Hardhome.
Oh boy. Well, easily best episode of the entire season. I would probably say that, I think there's a lot of really good stuff in this episode, a lot of really great character stuff, a lot of great character moments, and overall I thought it was a very hard-hitting episode too. Yeah, I would probably say I would probably give this 8.5 out of 10, I'd say.
This is the first time since episode 9 of season 4 that we have an episode that's an 8 or above. That actually belongs with the standard of the original seasons, the good seasons. Because 8 and above was the standard that we had before Breaker of Chains. I don't think anything got below that From the episodes when Joffrey was still alive, nothing went below an 8 out of 10. And nothing has been that high again since the last episode of season 4. So we've finally, for you, it's finally risen to that standard again, which is really nice to see. Did you expect an episode of this caliber in this season?
Maybe not to this degree, but I expected there to be at least one good highlight, like massive highlight of the season.
Yeah, so Hardhome is probably my favorite episode from the bad seasons. It's got a really well done storyline at Hardhome with the Night's Watch and the Wildlings and the White Walkers, with a good setup with Sam and Ollie. I also really like the first conversation that Tyrion has with Daenerys and Jorah Mormont. Had some really good dialogue in there. It's probably the best stuff Tyrion's had, and since the speech in season 4, probably the best stuff he's had since then. And the break the wheel scene's a bit mixed, but there's some good stuff in there. But Jorah Mormont overall has been really well done, really well performed. Then you got everything with Cersei is fantastic. I love her character. Just such great stuff in King's Landing. The Arya Bravos side story is intriguing, and there's some really good stuff in there. I actually think that there are elements of this Bravos storyline that don't get the credit they deserve from some people, probably because they're a bit esoteric and you need to be really tuned into it to properly get the subtlety of it, and I think a lot of people find the dialogue quite confusing because you have to sort of be really on your toes and thinking to really understand it. But I find it quite intriguing. And then you've got Reek with Sansa and the revealing of Bran and Rickon. That's all really good stuff. I have a couple of issues with this episode, but overall, it's really strong, mainly because of the second half. And like you, I'm also going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. A very strong rating, given how wobbly this season has been. So yeah, well done. Well done, Game of Thrones. Good job. Hardhome.
Very good job. Very good job.
So, next time, Season 5, Episode 9, is called The Dance of Dragons.
Oh boy, a heavy Daenerys episode. Love it.
Your anticipation for The Dance of Dragons?
Well, it's episode 9 of Game of Thrones, of a Game of Thrones season, so it's seemingly the trend would be as big, but because of this episode, now I'm not so sure. So I imagine something big also. I think something big still will happen. We're at the penultimate episode, and now we're even with this episode, it still doesn't feel like it in a strange way. Maybe for the wall, maybe it does, but everything else I think is, other than probably with Cersei, it needs something. It needs something big, and maybe next episode will be that for Daenerys / Marine. Yeah. Other than that, I'm very intrigued how they end the season, more so than anything, because we've got 2 episodes left, and now the season's done.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they got 2 hours left to tell. Well, I guess slightly more than 2 hours, yeah. But they got just over 2 hours left to wrap up the season story. Do you think they can do it?
I'd like to know what the overarching theme of the season will be, because I'm not really sure what it is.
Yeah, it's
like this has been a very big season of change, of like things changing from the norm. But yeah, it's very intriguing what
it's easier to identify the themes when you ask me if you know, and actually there was a reference to this title because Ramsay said it, leave a feast for the crows. If you were to ask me the themes of A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, which are the respective books that this is adapted from to some extent, it'd be a lot easier for me to sort of explain, because it's a lot more consistent and George Martin focuses a lot more on that. Whereas it's this season, it's sort of, because it's so Frankensteined together in some respects, it's difficult to really pinpoint that, because it's a bit of a hodgepodge surgery of storylines that happen to coexist with each other. I think there are themes in there, but they're just not as clear as they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not as fleshed out and as expanded, really.
No.
Yep. We didn't get any Dawn in this episode, and we didn't get any Stannis either.
Yeah, I was thankful with Dawn, but yeah, no Stannis again. It just feels like maybe the next episode. I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do with Stannis this season. How they're gonna end the season off with him.
And they didn't have anything in King's Landing outside of the prison cell.
Very intriguing.
Yes, there's a lot. It's a lot to accomplish in 2 episodes, so let's see if they can pull it off, I suppose.
Yeah. We shall see.
Alright, well, we will see you next time for Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 9, The Dance of Dragons. I bid you adieu, a good night, and a goodbye. A bang.